Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart for joining us as a sponsor. Quality Auto Mart was born in 1985. They are owned and operated by Mark and Nancy Repke. Quality Auto Mart provides all the services, repairs, and maintenance for your vehicle's needs with a 3-year auto parts and labor warranty. They offer complimentary vehicle safety inspection and estimates. Also, they offer a shuttle service, and the 4th oil change is always on them. They are located at 7307 on State Road 46 in Batesville, Indiana. Make sure you give them a call at 812-934-2301. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Strong Dads here with Merle. We have another special guest in the house.
Yes, we do.
We have, so there's only a couple of our guests that have been 2-time guests.
He's a repeat offender.
I know.
Yeah.
But so kudos to him, and we'll get into who our special guest is here in a second. But really excited back doing our show. Merle, how you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
We're enjoying the change of seasons around here, so
Right.
that's good. But I do want to talk about our topic today because, oftentimes we try to get into conversation with men about challenging them. So one of our deals is challenging and encouraging men to do better. All right.
Yep.
And I get to do that quite a bit in marriage coaching,
Sure.
work that I do. And then we're trying to cross the divide between husband and wife.
Sure.
But this guy's going to take us out of just the marriage.
Oh boy.
Okay.
All right, I like it.
Today, we want to welcome
Welcome back.
a repeat offender, Michael Ashford, back to the Strong Dads podcast. Michael, how are you doing out in Colorado?
Gentlemen, pleasure to be here. Colorado is beautiful. It's my favorite time of the year in Colorado. Summer and early fall are just a dreamland here in Colorado. So appreciate you guys having me back on. I'm excited for this conversation because it is desperately needed, man.
I like it.
Yeah. Well, so just so that our listeners can kind of tune into what we're doing here, the last time we had you on, you were running the Fit Dad Fitness podcast, right? And also, I think you had a trainer business, personal trainer business along with that. Is that okay? And so that we contacted you there because we're Strong Dads, and I also do a fitness component of what I do. But you were, I believe, more heavily in the fitness side, but you also are dealing with dads. And so that was kind of our connection last time. But we're going to go down a completely different road this time, okay? We're not really going to be talking fitness, at least in physical fitness.
Yes.
And Kyle loves that. You're one of these guys, Kyle. I refer to you people like you're a skinny fat guy. Like he can eat whatever he wants and he stays skinny, he stays fit, he stays strong, but he doesn't really have to think about it. But that will come back to bite you. So anyway, how about we'll thank our sponsors, and Michael, let's get into what you're doing, okay?
For sure. Yeah, Strong Dads, we would love to thank Quality Auto Mart for coming alongside of us. Quality Auto Mart, check them out. They got a lot of cool stuff for all your auto needs out there. Check them out. Let them know we sent you up there. So for sure, over in Batesville, Indiana. I know last time I messed it up, Batesville, Indiana.
That's right. All right, I also want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for all your landscape, hardscape, and even home decor needs. Contact Casey's Outdoor Solutions. This time of year especially, mum's the word, right? The whole place around here, mums are the flower for fall. And so
Jenny told me to go get apple cider, whatever, and I had to go seeking for that. So I know all you ladies out there are into the fall thing.
Well, you can get all that at
spice.
Casey's. Apple spices and pumpkin spice.
Right.
Here we come. All right. So let's talk a little bit, Michael. Before you were into the fitness arena, okay, and you made what I'll call a hard jump to a different subject matter completely than talking fitness. So help our guys understand, like, okay, what are we talking to you about today? What's going on? What's different?
Oh man, there's a story there, isn't there? So picture it's June-ish 2020, and just guys, think about everything that was going on in the world at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You had right in a row, the murders of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, excuse me. And then you had the subsequent demonstrations where half of the country was pitted against the other half. Half of the country felt that it was kind of a reckoning, a final reckoning of, look, this can't happen anymore and we're sick of it. And you had the other half of the country saying, look at these mobs trying to tear down America. So you had that just tension, very real tension, right? Then, of course, we're watching, Donald Trump and Joe Biden debate each other, and I use debate in air quotes, where I don't
term there.
I don't accept that behavior from my children.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest there. And here we are expected to vote for one of these two men to lead our country. Mm-hmm. So just one of the most hate-filled, animosity-filled presidential elections that I think any of us have experienced. On top of the fact that we were sitting at home, quarantined, in the middle of a pandemic that none of us had ever experienced before. And that was bringing out emotion from all different angles. And I'm sitting there watching the news with my wife and just thinking, what in the world can I do? I feel so incredibly helpless, but at the same time, I feel like there's got to be something out there I can do. And me being a podcaster and a former journalist, I was like, well, I'll start another podcast. And because I got the overwhelming sense that, yes, while all these major issues and goings on were incredibly important, I had a theory that we weren't as divided as we were being made out to be. That there was far more common ground. There were far more things that we could agree on. We can be far more civil with each other, even when we disagree, than how we are being portrayed, how we interact with each other online and on social media. Like, I don't feel that's who we are, was kind of my thesis. So I started my podcast. It's called The Follow-Up Question. And it is exactly as it sounds. As I said, my background is I'm a journalist. I got my degree in journalism and mass communications from Kansas State and worked as a professional journalist for several years out of college. I know how to interview people. It's one of the things that God has blessed me with the desire and the skill to be able to do. So all I wanted to do was just invite people from different perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences, and just ask them questions. With the theory that if I did that, we'd find common ground. Mm-hmm. All right. So how this gets into going away from the fitness stuff, several things there. I get to later in the year in 2020. I'm loving the podcast. I'm having incredible conversations with just the most diverse array of people that I never would have connected with had I not started this show. And I'm loving it. At the same time, I'm feeling a little bit of a pull that, hey, this is more important than the fitness stuff. I love fitness. I still work out. And this is really important, guys. My boss came to me and said, Michael, I think you're doing a little too much. Like, I have a full-time job. This is not what I do full-time. Full-time, I'm the director of marketing at a software company. And so he sat me down. He's like, look, I'm concerned that you're dividing your attention in a lot of different areas. And we, as your full-time employer, aren't getting our fair share.
Yeah.
Guys, there was a moment where I was like, who does he think he is to tell me how to live my life? And that quickly turned into, oh my gosh, he's right. Like, he's right. And I got to make this right. I'm the sole breadwinner. I cannot let my offense and my ego control me right now. No. So he and I made a plan, and I said, look, I'll shut things down. I ended the podcast. I stopped training people. I still ran Fit Dad Fitness, the website and the social media, until, where are we? We're September 20th, 2022. About a month ago, I said, it's not worth it anymore. And I so love the work that I'm doing with the follow-up question and the speaking opportunities that I'm getting and the people that I'm connecting with and the message that I feel is resonating enough. I'm going to go all in with that in terms of shutting down the fitness side and making sure that my outside focus is on that. So I'm a talker. That was a very long-winded answer to your question, Hutch, but that's how we got to this point, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned the idea of common ground. I believe we have a lot more in common. And you and I were emailing back and forth a little bit, and I recognize this something probably 15 or so years ago in the school setting that I worked in. And again, I was a counselor in the school setting. About, I don't know, 15 or so plus years ago, we went on a rampage. Actually, it was a federally sponsored endeavor. Celebrate diversity, celebrate diversity, celebrate diversity. And, you know, on its surface, that sounds so wholesome and good. Yeah, like I should be able to celebrate. Think about the word celebrate everybody's differences. And the reality, what I started to find is, so you're making kids play with each other that normally wouldn't play with each other, to have conversation and stuff. And what you found is it just got messier, because I always use the example. So I'm going to listen to rap music, okay, because I don't normally listen to rap music. So I'm going to go ahead and celebrate. I'm going to listen to rap music, and I'm going to learn to celebrate it. And after a while, you finally go, this is exhausting. This is not how I'm wired. This is, you know, and so I realized we're really missing this. We really need to get off the celebrate diversity, and we've got to celebrate similarity. Similarity is the common ground, I think, that you're talking about. Similarity is what brings us. This is what we can say, hey, well, you know what? You're a dad too, right? Or like, hey, you got to be a breadwinner too. And let's talk about that versus, you know, why you vote for this team and I vote for this team, okay? And I just feel like, wow, it sounded like such a great endeavor to celebrate that diversity. But so my movement is, and I do this in marriage all the time, let's stop looking at people's differences in the marriage. Let's go back to the thing that brought you together. Let's celebrate your similarities. We have to start there. That's the big root system that ties us together. Celebrate similarity and then respect diversity.
Yeah.
We respect it. All right. And so anyway, that's kind of my thought on that. I don't know what your take is. I don't know what your experience has been in that world, but what's your thought?
You kind of hit on it right there at the end. I don't believe so much of life is not a binary either or choice.
Right.
Diversity and our differences should be honored and respected and acknowledged. A lot of times our differences aren't even acknowledged, and that can lead us down some dangerous paths. I'm finding in the conversations that I'm having. But you're right in that our similarities are not celebrated enough. They're not leaned into enough is the language that I would use. And it both can coexist. Both can exist at the same time. We can honor and acknowledge the ways that we're different culturally, spiritually, and still come into a place of recognizing that there are commonalities. And I mean, we are all the same species. Now that species is a very diverse and intricate species, yes, made up of very different thoughts and opinions and ideas and experiences and perspectives. Absolutely. That doesn't mean that we have to just lean into one and disregard the others. And we so often boil our experiences or our interactions with each other into a binary. That you're either, your way is wrong and my way is right. Your way is evil and my way is good. You're either with us or you're against us. And that's just not how life is. Yeah. I'll put it this way. One of the things that I have been very, very cognizant of with my show, I even said it when I described why I started it. I wanted different perspectives, different voices, people that differed from me on my show. I wanted to talk to them. I wanted to hear from them because I did have this theory that we could find common ground despite how different we were. I have never once specifically called out the fact that I have had, and this is actually the first time I'm doing it. It's funny. It's kind of ironic that I'm saying that I have made it a point to get Black people, get white people, get Asian Americans or Asian Pacific Islanders on the show, to get people with physical disabilities, to get straight and gay people, to get atheists and Christians on the show. I've never specifically called out the fact that this week I'm talking with an atheist, and that I specifically went for that. Does it come up in the interview? Absolutely. We have great interviews and conversations about that. I even had a friend tell me one time, I think you should lean into that more and like really promote the fact that your show is so diverse. And I said to her, I love the fact that I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
That's important to me, that I acknowledge it and that I understand my heart and my goal for the show, and that through the conversations, through the ways that I present myself as the interviewer, I didn't have to say that.
Yeah.
There's an acknowledgement and a leaning into there that we need to get better at molding together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, part of what, Michael, what you're talking about there is how in the last probably 5 to 8 years, the whole word of identity, we just did an entire show on identity. And the idea here is, so you're going to interview a gay person and a straight person. And so even if somebody would be willing to jump into that, what risk is that? They're both people first, right. And that common ground of that. So when the idea that you don't even make that part of your topic, you're interviewing two people, and then you come into a difference of how they approach life, but they're still two people, right? And I just think that we've really, everybody wants to belong to a team, right? Everybody wants to wear a jersey. Everybody wants to have their certain thing, and that becomes almost their God. Like, well, no matter what, you cannot touch this part of my life. And that's just a dangerous place to be.
It is, and I'm finding that one of the things that has started to become a really common theme with a lot of the interviews that I have is that we go into a dangerous place when we become certain of what it is that we believe to be true. There are truths, we can get into what the definition of truth is. Even that's up for debate these days. But I look at my faith, for instance. I look at my faith and my faith in God, my relationship with Jesus. And I believe now one of the marks of a mature faith and a mature believer is that you're actually less certain of how and when and why God moves. Mm-hmm. But my relationship becomes strong. My relationship with God becomes stronger through that uncertainty, right? Mm-hmm. There's a peace, there's a digging into, there's a leaning into of trying to advance my faith and my relationship with God, while at the same time being less certain. How in the world could I presume to acknowledge and love and have a relationship with an infinite and always there and always will be God, and understand the how and the what and the when of his movements?
I've always been really cautious when you get into conversations with people and they'll say, well, I believe it's the will of God. And, so I went and I took this new job because it seemed like God was opening all the doors and the windows and this new job, and God just presented it to me. And then all of a sudden, 6 months down the road, they're like, this is the worst job of my life. What's going on? And again, I don't even know what that means anymore, because it's way beyond my scope. I don't even have the capability to know, what is of God, what is of me. Like sometimes it was just sparkly and flashy and caught my eye, and I can say, well, the stars aligned just right, and I'm just going to credit that to God. So I do hear you with that idea of we become so certain how we say, oh, that was God working, when in fact, I just don't even know. Yeah. What I do know, I know what... I know God's nature from the sense of I can watch his physical nature. I can see his trees and his seasons, and I can see that, and I see how things work in that way when they're done well. And I know what his nature is with humans. And I think the thing that blows me away is that Jesus is actually so far out of the human nature. He does things that does not make sense to us. And that is even, like you said, like that makes me even want to have more faith. Yeah. Because he does not act like us. Yeah. We punch our enemy, and he loves his enemy. Yeah. All right. And so that is confusing to me. That's why I want to strive even more to go, I don't know if I get this whole God thing, but I do believe there's something to it.
said. So,
Hey, Michael, I want to go back to what you're talking about. So you're talking, having people from all different walks of life on your podcast, to ask those follow-up questions. Is there a common thread that you're finding kind of throughout all those conversations you're having with different people, again, of all different walks of life, whether that is, race, religion, whether that is, whatever they quote unquote identify at? Is there a common thread that you're finding kind of in all those conversations?
Oh yeah. One is we don't want common ground, or at least on the surface we don't. And that's been a realization over probably the last 6 months or so that I've started to come to is leading with the message of let's find common ground with each other, really hard. We don't want it. There's too much uphill battles that we're trying to fight there that I've started to back off a little bit of my messaging of that. Now, do I think it's possible? Absolutely. And do I think common ground exists? Yes. I'm taking a little bit different approach to it though. What I'm finding is that we were never taught to communicate well. We were taught from the moment that we're born, basically, to exert your will on someone rather than extract from them, to understand, to listen, to have empathy, to relate to them. We were taught to speak with certainty, to find the right answer and to speak it with certainty. We were taught to debate. I mean, how many of us took debate in public speaking classes where we had to take a perspective and argue that side to the death, basically, figuratively? I was in mock trial in high school where we acted like pretend lawyers, and we were taught by real lawyers, never ask a question that you don't always know the answer to. Well, what does that do to our curiosity? That just shuts it completely down. You use questions as weapons rather than as a chance to learn. How many of us took writing classes in high school or college where we had to write persuasive essays? Like, just over and over and over again, we were taught you have the right answer and stick with that right answer. And it was demonstrated to us. It is consistently, shown. It's incentivized on social media to be firm and right in what you believe and never waver. And you are losing the complete other half of what effective, real communication looks like. The ability to ask questions because you're actually curious about that person and you want to actually understand their views and perspectives. How to actually listen and not make it a performance. Like, so much of this phrase active listening involves, mirror their body language and have your hands out to them and nod yes when you agree with them. So I'm supposed to act like I'm listening to them rather than actually listen to them.
Yep.
We weren't taught how to give space to someone. We so rush into, I've got to cut them off and give my opinion, and I've always got to be at the ready with something else to say. Well, what if you didn't? What if you let some uncomfortable silence linger out there? Like, all of these things, I'm realizing that we were not taught to communicate well. And so that's a common theme that I'm finding. Yeah. One other common theme that I'll say is the people that are the best at it, the people that are the most self-aware, the most willing to go into the uncomfortable conversation and linger there, are the people who ask the most questions, and they do it in a specific order. They first ask questions of themselves. They get introspective, they get in their heads, they start to examine why it is they believe what they believe, what's been the makeup of their experience as a human being that has led them down the path to, here's what I believe. Good, right, wrong, bad, indifferent, whatever. This is what I believe. Then they start to ask questions about others. They're still in their minds, but they start to get curious about somebody else. That person over there, they make me mad. I don't like their perspective. I don't like the things that they're saying. Why? Like, let's get deep and start to ask questions about, why do they believe that when I'm so against it? What could be true about their life that they would think that differently than me? And then finally they go and then ask questions of others. They actually get curious. They listen. They give space. They understand the difference between empathy, sympathy, understanding, and an agreement. There's a big difference between those four things. Mm-hmm. That is the most self-aware people that I know, the people who do this the most effectively. And by this, I mean communicating well. They ask questions in that order.
That's great stuff. I mean, that is, what we find all the time in the counseling world when you have a husband and wife that are at odds with each other and there's still that tension that you can feel in the air. I will watch the wife be speaking of something, and then I will glance my eyes back and forth to the husband, and you will see he's already shut her off, and he's thinking of his reply to her. Mm-hmm. In other words, and that comes from that whole idea of I had to establish my narrative, all right, and then I have to build it, and now I have to protect it. Right. And so that narrative is like, well, I'm right, or this is my way or the highway, right? These kind of things. And so in the meantime, she's over there talking and he's already formulated his next argument point. He's dropped her. And so frequently I'll see that happening and I'll be like, okay, let's just stop. Okay, tell me what she said. And I want you to tell me what she said, not using her words, but using your own. And he can't do it. He can't do it. All right. And he will, well, she said something about, the store and all this. Is like, no. What was she saying? Well, here she's hurt because of what's going on. And she's trying to express that. And he's blown away. And so that whole idea, like in our world, I purposely put dead space in. I have to plan it. So this is a very mechanical thing when people are enraged. I have to literally say, you don't get to talk. She's going to talk and we're going to take 30 seconds and we're just going to sit here. Okay. And that feels like 3 hours. They don't like it, but you have to train that, like you said, because they're so busy with their narrative in their head that this is something that they have to protect because this is them. Yeah. This is how they identify. Yeah. Great stuff.
There's a woman that I spoke with on my show. Her name is Justine Lee, and she was a nonprofit organizer, and she actually started this organization called Living Room Conversations, and it was getting people together with different views of the world and in a living room setting over food usually, and having them talk. And she introduced me to something that she called radical empathy. And it's similar to what you were just saying, Hutch. It is, can you voice the opinion of someone else as if it were your own? Mm-hmm. So not just say, well, they think this and they meant this and this is what they believe, but actually put it in the first person. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say what Hutch believes as if it were what I believe. And it is wildly uncomfortable. If you think about all the issues that divide us right now, just think about someone who is staunchly pro-choice, articulating the views of someone who is pro-life as if it were their idea or opinion, or it's so uncomfortable, or the reverse of that. It's so uncomfortable, but it is a wonderful way to begin to understand how someone came to that view. You begin to understand the makeup of that person in a very profound way. And you have to listen to them. To your point, you got to listen to them.
So Michael, obviously here at Strong Dads, we're talking to dads and we're talking to men and really trying to, we talk a lot about the next generation and bringing up the generational kind of so that way, because a lot of the problems we currently see as far as on the dad side has been this multi-generational fail, the dads are just failing. As we kind of move this conversation, like obviously you've talked about addressing some of the things as far as the common threads throughout a lot of the conversations. What are some things that we can, in your opinion, we can kind of start incorporating in our day-to-day life with our kids to hopefully bring up the next generation, of kids that are that this whole idea of being so different than everybody and almost like celebrating that, to kind of like back to the core. So like, how do we begin to incorporate this idea, kind of what we were talking about with, having the true empathy for people and kind of hearing what they're really saying. How do we start to incorporate that with our kids?
Great question. I would say model this first and foremost. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, it really comes down to how you treat people in conversation, how you communicate with them is a level of respect,
Yeah.
right? That you're giving someone the respect as a human being that they deserve. That right is afforded to them at the very least, the respect of their humanity, right? You demonstrate that because we all know as dads, like so much of what is actually um, like what is actually given to our kids is done through our actions rather than our words. And so if we do that for other people, think about how you talk about your coworkers or your boss, or if you're a leader, especially if you're a leader, how you talk about and how you engage with the folks that you've that are in your charge as a leader. Your kids hear those conversations with your spouse over the dinner table or while you're making dinner or and watching football on Sunday. Like they hear those conversations. How you talk about others when they're not in the same room is incredibly important, and understanding that there's a difference between them having a position that you disagree with and them being a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Are there bad people in the world? Yes, there are. But we sometimes, I think, assign that label or assign that name to people who we simply disagree with, and that's arguing in bad faith, I believe.
Michael, I love what you just said there. Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you too much. Man, I think the disagreements, because naturally when you live with somebody, you're gonna have disagreements. I think the disagreements you have with your spouse is one of the best ways to teach our kids how to engage in conflict and engage with people you don't agree, and do it just like you said before in a respectful way. Because one of the first disagreements your kids are ever going to see is probably you and your wife disagreeing, and how we treat our spouses in the midst of conflicts. Man, that is such a huge way to exemplify the way in which you can go out and then treat other people, having that common thread of just respecting them, even though you have a disagreement. I didn't want to stop you too much because I think you were getting ready to say something else. But man, I just think the disagreements and arguments we have with our spouses is a great way to teach our kids what conflict should look like, or the vice versa, what conflict should not look like.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And what's the cliche? Like how you model your relationship with your spouse, your son will understand how to treat his future spouse, and your daughter will look for someone who treats her that way. I'm kind of muddying the waters on that cliche there, but that is so true.
Yeah.
I mean, be that demonstration to your children of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Something else that I always try and keep in mind, like I've got a tween, I've got a 12-year-old boy and a 9-year-old daughter, and one of the things that I try really hard, and I don't get it right all the time, nobody does, but I fail just like anybody else. I try to put myself back in their place. That radical empathy that we talked about.
Yeah.
What was it like at 12 years old? What were the things that I was concerned about? What were the things that I thought were unfair that my parents did? And voicing that and acknowledging that in your children. Give your children credit for what they can understand and what they can absorb. I think too often we as parents kind of don't give them that credit, that they're wise. And if you're doing your job as a parent, they should be. You should be having those conversations. You should be explaining the ways of the world to them as you see it, and based on your morals and ethics. But also understand there was a time when you were 12 years old and you thought chores were unfair too.
I still do.
That's called a honey-do list now.
Yeah.
Exactly. It just morphs a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's such a power here too that, and I'd be curious to see what you've run into in various interviews about emotion. So one of my rules when I'm actually coaching couples, and this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but not really, I say from now on, there will be no more arguments in this marriage. No more arguments. And I say that because there is some presuppositions that happen immediately when you say the word argument. One is, we're going to get emotional. Okay. I mean, I know there's legal definitions of arguments, but in human life, argument right away goes, oh yeah, we're going to task. Yeah. Okay. So one, it invokes emotion. And two, argument always comes with the idea that there's going to be a win and there's going to be a loss. Yep. All right. And as you said, like most things are not black and white, that plain and simple. And so I trying to teach people like, listen, first off, we're not allowed to go into this conversation when we are all blown up emotionally. Yeah. All right. So we got to get the emotion under check. The second thing is are you wanting to win so that you feel good and you can say, okay, I beat my spouse on this issue and now I'm over top? Or do you want to win for the marriage? What would be best for the marriage? And so some of these topics, everyone believes they're fighting for the betterment of mankind, when in fact it might not be that. It might be so that I look better than you. I win the argument. And I think it's just a dangerous place. Like right away, like when I see argumentation going on, it's like, yeah, well, we're gonna turn the stove down a little bit. And we're gonna let this emotion calm down. And I'm gonna ask you, is it really important that you win this for you, or are you winning this for us?
I interviewed a guy recently who introduced me to the phrase total victory fallacy. That so many of the issues that we're concerned with, including in our marriage and in the arguments that we have and the disagreements that we might have, we're obviously two different people in a marriage. You don't want to be the same people. That would be probably a little boring and weird. Yeah. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier. There's this, what we've been taught, what we've been modeled, what we're incentivized with is to try to get to total victory. Whether it is over someone we disagree with politically or spiritually or relationally in our arguments with our spouse. Hutch, you just made a great point. What does it say about your heart if you are trying to achieve total victory over your spouse? Like, to what end, to what gain? Yeah. What does that do for the marriage? I gotta believe, like, I don't want to treat my wife as I would, somebody that I'm on the football field competing with.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like this is not a binary game. This is an infinite game, to use Simon Sinek's language a little bit there. We're in this for the long haul. This is not a, at the end of the day, we choose a winner and a loser. Like, that's not how marriage works. That's not how most things in life work. There are no rules. There are no set standards or rules that we're playing this game with. So why in the world would you want to try to achieve that total victory? And part of what Dan Vallone, he is the guy I interviewed, part of what he said was, when you accept that total victory is not the outcome that you actually want, the solutions will at times feel perhaps a little unjust, a hit to the ego, maybe even morally dissatisfying. They're going to feel messy. But what does it do for the relationship when you lean into that discomfort, when you lean into that mess and try and clean it up with your spouse, with your partner, with that person that you disagree with? One of the words that I interviewed the former ambassador to the UK and Sweden, the former US ambassador to the UK and Sweden. And one of the phrases that he told me about that I use all the time is co-creation. What if so often we're trying to come to an argument or come to a point where we disagree with our solution, and we want our solution to be the way that ultimately gets decided upon. And again, going back to the total victory fallacy, that means the other solution is wrong and we push it aside. Well, what if we came together in our mess, in our discomfort, and co-created something completely different? We worked on the solution together, and we can. It even goes beyond compromise. It's like we both have this idea of how this should work, but what if there was a third way?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you're touching on compromise, but then the compromise is kind of the melding together of two different plans, whereas the co-creation is, so how about something even different that we both instrumentally build? Yeah, yeah,
exactly. And I'll just say, there are a lot of things my wife and I, for instance, get wrong, but one of the things that I think we get really, really right is our kids have never seen us raise our voices to each other. They've seen us disagree. They've seen us, maybe even have slight arguments here and there, but it's always done out of respect. That's not to say that emotion is a bad thing. I think there are times where emotion is needed. It's how you have your handle over it and how that emotion in that moment doesn't lead to destructive emotion down the road.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's one thing that my wife and I have made a very clear point on we've striven to make sure, to your point, Kyle, how we demonstrate argument and disagreement to our children. We're hoping, our theory is that they're going to understand what that looks like down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Michael, you talked about like the active listening earlier. And one thing that we do with kids all the time is, you can teach the active listening, like did you look at their eyes and their body language and all that, but you will quickly move that from just an act to a reality if you say to your kids, okay, in your own words, tell me why your sister is upset. And then, well, I don't know, well, because they really weren't paying attention. And so I will have like our daughter go back and say, okay, explain what's going on. And I mean, it is a mechanical process in terms of like, you have to teach, okay, did you see? I mean, look at her. She's, read the heart, those kinds of things. But then when he has to put it in his own words, I mean, like you said before, that is so uncomfortable. But now he starts to get so much more of why I've got to pay greater attention. It's no longer an act. It's like, no, you don't act like you know how to field a baseball. You actually get out and you start practicing how to get down on the ball so it doesn't go through your legs, And these are things that we can do with kids, but we have to model it, we have to show it, and then we have to let them get dirty with it.
Well, that's where I was going to go is we have to model it ourselves, because we as parents, I know I do, have a tendency to jump in and just demand the solution right away. Like, okay, you were wrong, you were right, go. Like,
right.
go do this. We have a tendency, and circumstances sometimes require that of parents, right? That we have to kind of set the rules and be unbreakable in those. But we have to first kind of come to the conversation in our position as mediator in those, as with that in check as well, that we're coming to the conversation with a heart of asking questions as well, and understanding and trying to get inside both views rather than just kind of dictating our edict from on high as parents.
Okay, so I got a question for you.
Something I fail at quite a bit.
No, I've got many ribbons on those failures. So what's the outlook? What's the outlook? Are you seeing progress? Are you seeing the conversation becoming greater and people are actually coming together better? Or are you optimistic, pessimistic? What's your thought?
I'm both. I'm optimistic and pessimistic and a little bit in between. I think the people that I've connected with that have come on my show, one of the things that I see over and over again is we have a fantastic conversation. We will have this nuanced, intricate, detailed, messy conversation about really important topics. And then I always get a little bit disappointed. They'll go on, I'll see them on social media like a week later, and it's anger and, back to the binary, my way's right, your way's wrong.
Yeah.
It's a difficult habit to break.
Yeah.
We are really good at convincing ourselves that we are right. We're good at finding information that validates our opinions and our views. We're really good at dismissing those that don't. And so, I'm one man trying to fight a lifetime of reward systems and value systems and ways of being taught that have gotten us into a lot of the messes that we're in.
Yeah.
But I am heartened by the fact that so many people, when you get them one-on-one, are willing to have those conversations. are willing to admit that they don't know everything, are willing to see the other side. I've just, the next phase, I think, of the work that I'm doing is how do I grow that and scale that and make that something that is more valuable to people than the value of being right.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough at this point to figure that out. And that's why I'm still doing more interviews. But I do think it comes back to how we were taught. How we were taught. And so I'm getting my master's because eventually I want to go into teaching. I'd love to start there at some point in my life, years down the road. But I think it does have to start in school. It does have to start at the home with parents and modeling that behavior. I don't have a great buttoned up answer yet, but I'm looking for it. And that's what I want people to do with my show is come along with me. Like all I'm doing is exploring this topic. I do not claim to have all the answers. I am trying to explore what this looks like. So join me in the journey because I think it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Michael. As we kind of move towards closing out this show, man, we did a little mini series. We did. When was the last time you talked to? And then we had someone, talk to someone of a different race. We had someone who went through tragedy, someone who was dealing with addiction, homelessness. We had them on, and I know those are some hard conversations. So, not that you need kudos, but man, I think what you're doing is really cool. Just getting into, diving into those hard conversations, not shying away. We talk all the time that as men, as strong men, man, it is our duty to be a part, to engage in those tough conversations. So, man, I give you all the props for diving into something that is very difficult. That it's kind of counterculture, right? The culture tells you to continue to stay with your team, but man, getting outside of your comfort zone and getting in those conversations, I think is really cool.
Thank you so much, man. That means a lot to me. And if I can give you an example of this at work, real quick, I did interview a man named Andy Norman. He's an atheist, and I know faith is a big part of this show, so I'm totally comfortable bringing it up here. I'm a lifelong Christian, right? And we had this back and forth conversation. He wrote a book about bad ideas and how we can immunize ourselves against bad ideas. And one of the things that he thinks is a bad idea is faith in God. And I got to tell you, man, there were several times I sat down on my computer to cancel that interview. It was keeping me up at night. I lost sleep about it. I created this entire conversation in my mind about how I was going to prove him wrong, and I was going to come back and hit him with these counter arguments.
Yeah.
We got into that, and I encourage people to go back and listen. We got into faith. We got into the subject of faith. We got in and we shared our ideas with each other. We had an incredible. It was one of my favorite conversations.
That's cool.
That's
no doubt.
Yeah.
And here's what is most important to me. We stopped recording. We were kind of chatting after the recording ended. And he goes, Michael, I just want to tell you this conversation gave me hope. And I have no idea what he meant by that, guys. I have zero, and I'm not going to suppose or presuppose, but just even him saying that, what does that do for me? Like, that tells me that this work is that important, that an atheist and a Christian can come together, and the atheist can say, our conversation gave me hope. Man, even if it's not hope and faith in God,
right,
having hope is central to the human experience. Otherwise, it's hopeless. And what are we living for then? Yeah. So that's the power of this. Like, if there's anything else that I have said today, this is the thing that I want to get through to people. There is power in doing this in more ways than we, I think, realize.
Man, great stuff. Well, what you just described there, Michael, is, in 1 Corinthians, it talks about love. Love is, right? Love is patient, love is kind. And then it goes, there's faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And what you did in a very simple way is you showed another brother love. And that's what gave him hope. And we think of love in so many other ways, erotically and so on. But love is just like, hey, you know what? I care about you.
Yeah.
And you treated him well with respect, and so that's why his hope came through the way that you showed love. And I think that's, if we go in and we're attacking everybody because we're arguing, there's no hope in that. right? Because there's no love in that. And I think that's another reason why I'm a Christian, because Christ, his work was all about love. Yeah. Because it's so weird to us. It's so strange and foreign. But what a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. Michael, how can people get a hold of you, hear what you're doing, watch what you're doing? How can they connect?
So my website is michaelashford.com. Everything is there. And the podcast is The Follow-Up Question. You can find it on any and all podcast players. I also do have a YouTube channel where I post clips. I don't post the full episode, but just clips of my interviews with these folks, of the most interesting things that they say from my viewpoint. So you can check that out too. But yeah, my website and the podcast.
Awesome. All right. Any final words you want to leave any of our listeners or viewers with?
Keep asking questions.
Yeah. I like it.
I love
Perfect.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for your time. We want to keep encouraging you to go out and do the work that you're doing. That's frontline work in a very contentious culture that we're in. And I would second what you said earlier. If you really want to do anything with this, let's just start in our home. Yeah. Let's start teaching our kids how to do these things. I mean, if you're going to wait for a politician to do it, good luck. Okay. You're going to be waiting a long time. Yeah, because, there's other things at stake there. And so you got to start in your home. Got to start with your marriage. And then, that's where we can see the next generation have even greater hope for some change.
Control what you can control. Your sphere of influence.
Love it. Very good.
I love it.
I'm going to do some Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. Yeah, thanks so much for Quality Auto Mart, Case Outdoor Solution, come alongside of us. Thanks, guys, for continuing to listen. Michael, keep going out there. Keep doing what you're doing, man. That's awesome. Love hearing it. Hope you guys are out there having a good week, and go out there and be some strong dads.
All right, Michael, we will be following the follow-up. All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.